Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. And if you can't figure out what we're talking about just based on the title and based on this, I don't know what to tell you. This is going to be a Formax video. This is going to be pretty definitive. I've got all the versions of the Formax here. I'll compare and contrast them and discuss a number of different things. The first thing I need to say is I'm a huge Andrew Demko fan. I'm a huge Cold Steel fan, and I'm a huge Formax fan. And yes, the Formax is huge. Okay, so big knife, very heavy duty. Let me just say that if you want a truly hard use folder that's built like a tank beyond what any ZT has ever thought about being, look no further, right? This is truly the most definitive hard use knife currently available. And if that's what you need, this is probably your best option. There are a couple of other things that you could look at, but frankly, having looked at most of them myself, nothing is going to be quite to the point of the Formax. All right, just absolutely love this knife for that reason and a number of others. I like the design, I like the maker, all that kind of stuff. Now, let me first, though, give credit where credit is due, and that credit belongs to the 8010. So the custom 8010 is the precursor to the Formax. And essentially the way Andrew Demko describes the situation was he was getting requests for a 4-inch blade 8010. And in working out that design and trying various things, he came to the conclusion that you couldn't just grow this. It didn't really work by just, sort of making this whole thing a little bit bigger. Some changes were necessary to make it all that he wanted it to be in the larger size. And those changes are what resulted in the Formax. Okay, so I wanted to throw that out there first of all. And I also wanted to point out that the 8010 is one of my favorite knives of all time. Like I would put this on the very shortest of short lists. Like if I could keep, I don't know, 2, 3, 5, 4, 4, 5 knives, this would absolutely be in that group. And if I could only keep one, this would be a contender. It would be on my short list. Okay. There are a couple of others that would be there, but this would be right there at the top. Okay, so moving that out of the way, let's get back because this would be at the top as well. The problem is you lose a certain amount of practicality here, okay? These knives are big, heavy-duty knives, and they're designed to be the kind of knife you carry when you know you're going to be doing stuff that is more than what you should be doing with a folding knife, okay? That's what these are all about, and they fill that role exceptionally well. My argument would be that the role of EDC, they don't fill exceptionally well. The 8010 does a much better job of that, and even it is going to be too big for some people, although yeah, not at all for me. And I would think, but I think the utility of this is good enough that, I would say just get used to it and carry it because it's awesome. Okay, so let's get back down here, take a look at these knives. I don't think I have enough room on screen to get them all open, but I'm going to try nonetheless. Maybe we can fit them all in there. Okay, so let's do a quick rundown on size, weight, and specs or materials. These are all 10 inches overall. They all have 4-inch blades. They all have 6-inch handles. They all basically weigh 10 ounces. I think they're listed at 10.2. Like at 10 ounces, who cares about the 0.2, right? So they're all 10 ounces. Very big knives. Couple points that we need to mention in terms of differences, especially with the Scout. The Scout obviously is going to be a Grivery instead of G10. It's going to have AUS 10 steel instead of the 20 CV that are found on the Formaxes. It is also going to have steel instead of titanium. And if you look in here, there's one difference that I want to show you guys. So see the lock spring there? If you look at either one of these two, you can see the lock spring is thicker on both of the standard versions compared to the Scout. Okay, let me just kind of show you. That doesn't really, I'm limited for space here. That doesn't really affect action. It doesn't really affect the way the lock feels. Okay, All of these, I will say, have very good action. Mike, by the way, thanks a lot for sending your Formax along. I did clean up this one a little bit. It was a little gritty when I first got it. And the owner, Mike, thank you again for sending it. He carries it every day, like all the time, constantly. And so it makes sense that it's got a little bit of roughness to it, a little bit of grittiness to it. Okay, so those are some of the major differences. There's also a bit of texturing here. The other thing to notice is, and you can feel it immediately when you pick these up, the Scout is about a 1/16 of an inch thinner. And it's funny, you think a 16th of an inch is nothing. But when you get the Scout in hand, you can immediately notice that 1/16 of an inch. All right, really, really quickly, you can feel that there's a difference, which is a little bit interesting and perhaps a little bit strange to me, but nonetheless, there you go. So the Formax is 9/16 thick. These are going to be a full 5/8, and you definitely notice that. Now, remember that for the US version of this knife, there were some fit and finish issues initially, and I had issues with this one. So when I first got this, the lock rode just a little bit high. It would actually just pop out past about a 1/16 of an inch or so, and I had to send this back to Cold Steel to have them work on it. They fixed it. It came back to me. Took quite a while, but nonetheless, I did go through it. I felt like it was worth it, and I'm happy that I did, so that now it functions exactly as I would want it to. That issue did not occur on the Italian version, and obviously not on the Scout. Now, let me run through a couple of little minute points, okay? First of all, let me begin by saying these two knives are essentially exactly the same. All right, there's some slight differences on the blade, and that's really about it. All right, the milling, I don't know. I've heard people comment that the Italian version, the milling, the finishing on the G10 is not as nice. It's maybe a little smoother, a little cleaner on the USA made. I don't know. That's a tough argument to sustain, I think, but that's the argument that has been put forward by a couple of people. Now, the blade, you can notice a little more different. So notice the cleanness of these lines on the USA made Formax. Also notice the buffing mark all along the blade. So, there's a balance here. Okay, this is a little cleaner. This is a little rougher. Moving over here, you can see these lines are not quite as crisp. It's a little rounded, almost like they were left in the stone washer a little bit too long. And they don't have that buffing mark down here. On the Scout, you get the same thing. It's slightly more rounded. It's just not as crisp and clean as the US version. I'll see if I can. There you go. And one more. Okay, so the blades are really the biggest difference. But there, again, from a user standpoint, you're not going to notice at all. From, if these are going to be collectors, safe queens for you, I guess you may want to do a little bit of due diligence, especially, so if you're buying on the secondary market, you do want to make sure that, if this has got that popped up lock bar, that it's been fixed. You'll want to see some pictures of the blade, see if it has the buffing mark, if you care about that. If you don't care, then don't worry about it. But if you're, let's say you're buying one of these and you're going to put it in a safe or something like that, then yeah, you might care about the buffing on the blade or some other minor details. But essentially, okay, outside of that, by the way, you can see that Mike is a lefty. He's got his clip on the wrong side of the knife. I'm not sure if it cuts still with moving that clip like that, but I guess he can comment on that. So those are kind of the biggest differences. I would say these two blades remind me more of each other. The cleanness and just the crisp lines on this one stand out as a little bit different. In terms of action, they're all very, very similar. And I've got to give the Formax Scout a lot of credit because you can see the fit and finish isn't quite as tight. You saw the lock spring there. And yet it feels very, very good. All of these have great actions. Oh, you can also see smaller stop pin here. Okay, so it's still a big beefy stop pin. There we go. but it's just a little bit smaller on the Scout versus the standard version of the Formax. Okay, so now I've got to get down to, if you're looking to buy one of these, which one are you going to buy? And honestly, that's a pretty tough point. I'm essentially going to say these two are, for all intents and purposes, the same, where the Scout is obviously going to give you the most budget-friendly option. I think these are 110, and I think these guys are about 330. On the secondary, you can probably get these for, I don't know, 200 and something. This guy, obviously much less. So, well, the Formax is a fantastic knife. I absolutely love it. I wouldn't recommend it as, the most practical EDC knife. I know some guys do EDC it. And of course, if you have a specific purpose, if you're, in your line of work, you're always needing just this tank of a folder, well, then it makes sense to carry, you're not going to do any better in terms of a hard use knife than these knives. So if you want the best, this is a great option. Okay, perhaps some of you will say, well, I'd rather compromise a little bit on toughness and durability and get something a little smaller and lighter. Makes total sense to me. All right. So for what it's designed to do, this is fantastic. Any one of these are really, really spectacular. Does the Formax Scout lose a whole lot when compared to the standard version? No, it doesn't. It gives up very, very little. However, it does give up a couple little things. One, it definitely feels different in hand. Not bad. It's still very comfortable. And so don't take this the wrong way. I'm not saying it feels bad in hand. It actually still feels very good, but these are a little more hand filling. The AUS 10 steel is not going to hold up as well as 20 CV. That said, it's still going to be a great steel. So if I did not have any of these, I would be really, really tempted by the Formax Scout. Having had all of these and experienced them all, if I don't know, if somehow I fell in a ditch and my knife got washed down a drain pipe or something and I just totally lost it and had to buy a brand new Formax, I would go and find another USA made Formax on the secondary market. Okay, I would. I like the feel of it a little better, and I like the blade a little better. When I say feel, I find this lock, especially after it was repaired, just snaps into place a little more crisply than the other two. Okay, so having said all of that, my overall conclusion is, yeah, I personally would take this one. If you sent me a message saying, hey, Kevin, I'm looking for a Formax, this is what I want to do with it, I'm going to use it, carry it, beat the snot out of it, I would buy the Scout. I really would. I would not spend the extra on this unless there's some other factors affecting that. I'm a huge Andrew Demko fan. I really like high-end materials, or you feel them both in hand and you just like the feel that much more. You like knowing that you've got titanium components and high-end steel. Again, those are all a little subjective, okay? They're not really absolutely central to the functioning of the knife, but for me, those subjective things matter. And again, I'm going to go for this one. This would be my second choice. And if I couldn't find either of these, I would still buy one of these. Okay, it's a great knife. And if you don't have a Formax and you're not sure about carrying something crazy big like this is fantastic. It's a little slimmer, it's much cheaper, and it gives you honestly one of the toughest folding knives in existence, if not the toughest folding knife in existence, for a much more accessible price point. So there you go. That's my discussion on the Formax. I hope that helped some of you. I hope that was interesting to you guys. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I will put a link down in the description box to White Mountain Knives and Southern Edge Knife Works, both channel sponsors. Again, a big thanks to Mike for sending this along. He sent a couple other knives along too, so you'll see a review coming up shortly. Again, we'll talk to you soon.